Good afternoon, Linwood. This is Mr. Thompson, or Mr. T, here speaking to you from Linwood Elementary with my partner.
Hi, I'm Mr. W, and also known as Mr. Wooldridge, and I'm also a counselor at Linwood and Sojourner Elementary. And today, I thought I would surprise my partner here. I was looking at our stats.
Oh, I'm excited, yeah?
Yeah, I was looking at our stats, and we hit 1,000 listeners this week. We went from single digits to 1,000 listeners.
Serious?
I am not serious. I'm not serious.
You're not serious.
I was lying.
Oh, that's cool.
And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Today we're going to talk about lying and how to
Okay.
deal with our kids when
man.
they're not telling the truth.
Yeah, that was... that's a tough one. Mr. W, I don't know if I can come back from that. You had my heart aflutter.
The truth is we had like 5 listeners. But there you go.
Yeah, well, five, that's up from last time, which was 4.
Yeah, we're feeling good.
Well, thanks for joining us today. Lying in school, or lying in general, is something that is challenging to do and can be difficult to handle as a parent and an educator, depending on things. Maybe talk to start out with is kind of like, why does it happen? Why do kids do that? What's the purpose of that?
Right. Well, okay, so let's talk about lying in general. So there are reasons why our kids lie. So our kids don't usually think this up as some big, strategic plan to get something. Lying is an impulse issue. And if you want to just kind of real quick, impulse is sort of like the first thought that comes to your head. So the way I teach it to kids is impulse is action without thought. So impulse control is thought before action. Impulse is action without thought. So for example, if I'm in a parking lot and a car's barreling down on me, I'm not going to sit in that parking lot thinking about all the things I should or could do. I'm not going to go over the list in my head and say I could jump, I could run, I'm going to get hit by the car.
Right.
So my impulse is you jump out of the way. And that's awesome. That saves your life. But for the most part, we like impulse control in our kids and in our adults. We want to be able to think about something before we act. So lying, stealing, swearing, those are impulse control issues. So why do kids lie? Well, number one is usually to get out of trouble.
Right, so that's a big one. I remember that as a kid.
Yeah, we've all done it. We've all done it.
Yeah, survival.
Yeah, you're in your living room and you're doing something you're not supposed to do and you knock over your mom's vase and mom comes in and says, "What happened to my vase?" And you say, "The dog walked by and knocked over the vase." Mm-hmm. You're not lying for any reason other than you don't want to be in trouble. And so that's one reason why kids lie. Another reason is sort of a self-esteem reason. Maybe they want to feel better about themselves, or maybe they want to sort of build themselves up a little bit. That's when you get little kids telling lies about, like, I can run faster than a car, or I went with my family and we went to, and they'll name some place that doesn't even exist. We went to the moon and we saw this, this, and this. And older kids, you'll get more talk about things they've done, or I got 100 on that test as well, that sort of stuff. Those are self-esteem lies. So those are lies to make us feel a little better about ourselves.
Seems like part of it, too, is, and this is why I think it's so important in elementary school, is that it can sort of become a reflex. I know that, there's been times, I think when I was younger, that it would be a strategy at some points for me, and seems to me like one of those things that the more you do it, it sort of just kind of gets easier and easier to have that sort of reflex impulse.
Yeah.
Becomes like your survival strategy, becomes sort of your go-to strategy if you don't have other strategies.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's so important to be talking about it, especially now in elementary school.
Right. Because you get that, to what you're saying, you get to that point where, we've been there. If you're an educator listening to this, you've been there where the kid is blatantly lying to you, but will not give up that lie, will not say no. And I think that's to where Mr. T is getting to, is that it's become such a reflex, such a defense mechanism that they can't let go of it. And at sometimes they even grasp it so hard that they start to believe it. But this could have happened, and this probably did happen. Oh, it did happen. That sort of lie.
Yeah, no, definitely. So I guess that leads us, pretty quickly into then what do you do about it? And I think that is the big $1 million question is, how do you handle it? And I think, there's a lot of different strategies for that. What do you like to do? How do you like to handle
Well, there's some sort of guidelines first. So when I'm working with a kid, and I know that kid has done something, and I know that kid is lying about it, the first thing I do is I don't ask the kid if they did it or not. Mostly because we get back to that reflex, right? So the kid's already in trouble. He's already lied about it. If I'm sitting there and I'm going to say, okay, Timmy, did you steal the candy from your teacher's desk? That kid is going to hold on to that lie because they're desperate. They're so afraid of being in trouble that doesn't work. So the first thing I would love parents to do is don't ask your kid if they did something. What I do is I just state what happened. So you took the candy from your teacher's desk. Let's talk about that. Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't take the candy from the teacher's desk. Okay, you know what? We're not going to talk about that because we already know you did. Mm-hmm. So, and I'll just keep going.
You can spend a lot of time doing that too. I've heard that kind of back and forth where it's like, yes, you did. No, I didn't. Yes, I did. Right. And it's fact, in some situations.
And that's how you treat it as fact. If the kid said, if there was a horse in the room and the kid said that's a donkey, you would say, no, that's a horse. And then you would talk, you keep going, right? Yeah. You're not going to argue about the donkey or horse. So it's the same thing with a lie. So that kid says, no, I didn't. And then my response is, no, that's already done. We already know you did. Now let's talk about what we can do. So the first thing I try to do every single time is I don't get into the did you. I don't ask the question. We just state this is what happened. Now, if there's a question, if I don't know for sure, I'm going to be less inclined to state it as a fact. I might ask questions around it. I might try to figure it out. And try to find other angles. But I'm talking about, you have a kid, they're lying, you know what happened. Then you just skip the question. You go right to stating, what happened.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and so that's one. The other thing is boys and girls are different. So, and you know this too, Mr. T, if you have a boy in your office, the worst thing you can do to that kid is say things like, I want you to look at me when I'm talking to you, and right. I want you to... Boys have a hard time with that. In fact, I've seen you do it, I do it too. When I have a boy in the office, I usually give him something to look at, to play with.
Right. We have lots of fidgets and things in our room, toys, things like that, because... And it puts people at ease, and I think that when you get in a conversation, they're already uncomfortable. We all remember what it feels like to lie and get caught. It's not fun. And so coming down on them isn't going to solve anything. It's really tempting. I gotcha. But it's that, here's something to do. Let's talk about what happened. Let's take the focus off of, the pressure of having eye-to-eye contact in some situations. And I think that's really smart what you're saying. Because it is. If they're feeling, if the better you can get them relaxed and calm and just to that part of their brain, where they can really talk about it and not feel on the defensive and
Yeah. So, giving them something to play with, not freaking out if they're not looking at you. They're hearing you. Mm-hmm. They hear what you're saying. Again, depending on the age, if the kid then is like walking around the room trying to play with stuff, I might say, no, I need you to sit down while we talk. But other than that, I'm not going to say, look at me. I'm not going to get all offended if the kid's head is down or if the kid is looking at the fidget I gave him. Boys have a harder time with that. Girls tend to be more eye contact, and girls tend to not want fidgets. They tend to want to just sit and talk to you about it. And so there's a difference there. But all you people with boys, and I have 2 boys, Theo has a boy, all you people with boys know that boys are more nervous talkers. It's harder to talk, so they need things to play with and things to sort of use as a kind of a security blanket while they talk. So that's the second thing, as I'm going to give them something to talk about. I'm going to give them something to play with,
And the other thing, we were thinking about is other strategies to help them. And you had mentioned this, and I think I hadn't heard this until we started working together. I think it's brilliant. Is the idea of taking the lie and putting I wish in front of it. And I think, how did you put it? I liked how you put that. It's not a lie.
It's not a lie if you wish it.
Right.
So you can say anything you want, and if you put I wish in front of it, that's not a lie. That's a wish. And we all know a wish doesn't have to be something that's true. So with little kids especially, older kids not so much. We kind of do a discussion, with them. But the little kids, I often will say, let's just put an I wish in front of it, and then it's not a lie. So if I have some kid telling all the other kids that, his dad is 10 feet tall and he's strong enough to lift a car and all this stuff, and you got kids teasing him about it and kids saying, you're a liar, then I'll work with that kid and say, all you have to do is put, I wish my dad was 10 feet tall.
Right.
That's no longer a lie. I wish I was strong enough to lift a car. That's no longer a lie. I wish I was 6'5".
Right. Well, especially if they made a mistake. If they knock something over. Yeah. I wish I hadn't done that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. No kidding. It kind of gives them a chance to say, I didn't do it on purpose. It was a mistake. And it's kind of saving face, and I think for some kids that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Saving face. And I don't have a girl, and I've never been a girl, so I don't know what it's like. But I know for boys, myself included, when I was a kid, saving face was a big deal of being able to talk about a lie honestly.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I wasn't being, reprimanded or something. It was just, you have to do it differently.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the I wish theory. So, that's a strong one for little kids. That's a good one to use.
Yeah. I like the other one too. The other one you talked about, and I think that's also the part of sort of a narrative therapy kind of approach, is an alternative ending.
Mm-hmm.
Is for those of you who don't know, it's sort of, you're kind of using, how would you describe narrative therapy? It's kind of like storytelling in a...
Yeah, it's telling your story, but then changing the ending of the story to fit a more positive narrative. So we all like to tell our stories. So anytime you have a conversation, narrative therapy is interesting because everywhere narrative therapy is happening. I coach football. I go to football practice, or I go to weight training right now, and the coaches are there, and the whole conversation is storytelling to get to a point, right?
Right.
So somebody says something about a kid teaching a kid how to do a certain lift, and then a coach will talk about how he learned that lift when he was there, and then somebody else will talk about their story. And so we use stories in language to really convey emotions, to convey facts, to convey our opinions.
I think the idea too of kids are writing their own story.
Right.
This story didn't happen the way I wanted it to happen. Mm-hmm. So here's a chance to go back and talk about how are you going to rewrite this story for the future? Because it's almost, literature, they're always reading about it in school. Reading is so important and such that I think that, I know with my son especially, storytelling, and you're the character, and you're rewriting your own story, is a pretty powerful way to think about problem solving. It's not, it's not just saying, what are you going to do differently? It's this is how it's going to go.
Yeah.
And that's pretty neat.
Yeah. And with some kids, I'll have them do pictures with their story.
Yeah,
and so I'll write it down for them, and then they'll draw a picture, and then we'll do the next thing. So, let's imagine the example I used to start the podcast, with the knocking down the vase and blaming the dog. So then maybe the first picture is the kid walking into the living room. And then the second picture is the kid trying to hit the plastic ball with the bat, and then the next picture is the kid swinging and hitting the vase. And then we'll do it again, but this time the first pitcher walking in, the second pitcher getting the bat and ball, and then the third pitcher is maybe the kid realizing, oh, I can't play ball in the house, I'm going to walk outside and hit the ball. And so then I'll draw a picture of him he'll draw a picture of himself walking out, and then maybe a picture of him hitting the ball outside. So we use those two therapies, and then those two different pictures, and then we talk about each one. How did it feel? What happened? Then in the second one, how would that have felt? What would have been different? And then that's a great teaching tool for kids.
Yeah, no, and that's really powerful. That's great, and for parents or teachers or whoever, and I like that, especially in a classroom, because you're already doing stuff you can incorporate into what you're doing. You can bring it into a lesson in some ways. And I like that. Just that concept in general, not just with lying, but a lot of things, is you can always rewrite your own story.
Yeah.
If you don't like what's happening, do it differently.
Right.
So that's really cool. I like that a lot. All right, so we talked about that. So I guess if we go back in time now, Mr. W, I guess you would say, I wish we had 1,000 listeners.
That's how I would say it differently. So if I'm doing narrative therapy, I'm going to write this out again, but this time I'm going to say, I wish we had 1,000
Yes. We're writing
listeners.
our story differently now.
Right.
Yes, right.
But I know we only have 3. So you 4 that are listening to us, I wish you would tell your friends about us, and then we can get more listeners.
If you each just tell 250 people, we'll be there in no time. So you have your work cut out for you 4 people. You're probably sorry you're listening now.
Right.
You just got a big homework assignment.
Right. 250, that's all we ask.
All right, let me tell you one more thing that's going on in Linwood this week. We are celebrating Earth Week a little bit early. I think Earth Week is next weekend. Not this coming weekend. I guess by the time I actually get this out, it'll be... So the 20th is when we're going to celebrate, and that's Friday. And so on Friday, we are going to save water by having people wear their pajamas to school. All right? So that's going to be... Yeah.
Try to link that.
So... Yeah, that's a good way to celebrate, though. I think that's cool. So what's going to happen, though, is that day also you can bring things that are hard to recycle at home, which is fantastic. I know I'm going to start looking around. Like things like unwanted markers, plastic caps and plastic bottle caps, styrofoam peanuts and other small pieces of styrofoam, plastic shopping bags. All that stuff you don't know what to do with, you can just bring it to school on Friday, and we'll recycle it for you.
Perfect.
So that's kind of cool. And then this week, we actually had a waste audit where all the kids came up, scraped their trays, and then divided up everything they had into different buckets. Like I can't remember the categories. Sorry, I have bad memory. But basically, like some of all the sporks that we have, all went into one bucket. I saw just a ton of sporks. So we kind of they're going to add all that up and divide it up, and we're going to see how much we waste and see how we can improve on that. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty exciting. Maybe even doing things like, maybe use silverware instead of sporks. Who knows?
Right.
But yeah, so some cool thinking around that, some cool problem solving around that. So it's always cool to get schools and kids involved in thinking about how to make the world a better place.
Very good.
All right, thanks for your time, everybody.
There will be no podcast next week because I'm going to be out of town next week.
Mr. W is going to Waco.
I'm going to Waco, Texas for a wedding. So no podcast next week, but we will join you in a week from, or 2 weeks from today or so. And we will come up with another podcast. Now remember, you 4 listeners, just 250 more. Keep it up.
That's right. And we're also looking for ideas. If there's anything you want us to talk about, we'd love to hear about it. So be sure to email us here. You can email me at Thompson, THOMPSONTH, at nclac.k12.or.us.
And you can email me, Wooldridge W, that's WOOLDRIDGEW at nclac.k12.or.us.
Very nice. And it's also on our website.
Yes, it is.
Which you probably just clicked on. All right.
Right.
Thanks, everybody. All right. Have a wonderful rest of the day, whatever you're doing. Thank you.